Sure. So we have a process where we connect entrepreneurs looking to raise funds with accredited angel investors. And we actually were the first funding platform to launch online in 2004. So we had to walk through with the SEC to develop this process to make sure it was in line with all the SEC's rules, given that there was no case law and there were no statutes for online solicitation to accredited investors. So what we do is we have investors create a funding request on the site, and then that is after approval and working through that with them. They will get approved, and those funding requests are made available to accredited investors to review.
And then our deals match on based on the investors' interest and type of deals.
Yes, everything comes down to location, industry, and funding amount. And those are really the key drivers in a deal. So we try to pair investors based on those criteria. Some investors look at deals nationwide. However, the majority want to invest locally in industries that they know very well. And there's a pretty set structure in terms of how much each investor and the range that they're willing to invest in. So we get investors that want to invest less than $50,000 in deals. We get investors that want to only invest between 100 and 250, and then investors beyond that as well. Yeah, typically an accredited investor is a former entrepreneur or executive that was successful and is now looking to invest in companies that are in the same industry that they made their living in. So you get, to go back over just real quick, they need to have income over $200,000 per year or a net worth of $1 million or more currently. Those statutes are going to change with the Jobs Act as the SEC puts new rules in place. And we can get more granular into the details of that later. But that's a basic overview. So a profile would be an accredited an entrepreneur, former entrepreneur, or executive that's been successful in their field and has a net worth of over $1 million.
And how much have you found that the typical angel investor is looking to invest?
It varies so much. The Kaufman Foundation has done some studies in terms of the average, and I think that the average check from an individual angel investor is less than $100,000. Sure. So we're more of a connection agent, and there are reasons for that. We used to track it more in depth, but there were actually SEC restrictions in terms of how involved we could be to make sure we weren't recommending certain deals and facilitating too much of that online. So it's all self-reporting back to us from, we have a reporting from both the investor side and the entrepreneurship side. And when those match up, we know that a deal has been successfully closed. So AngelList is a fantastic platform, and they're more focused on high-tech deals. So they're very concentrated in the Valley, and for 99% of the businesses that are getting started, they aren't a fit for that. And they have their niche very well defined, and they do a great job at it. Ours is more diverse in terms of industry backgrounds of our investors, funding amounts, and different types of deals that are open to. So you would never take a real estate deal too angel-less. It just wouldn't make sense for the investor class. But we actually have a ton of investors on our site that do real estate deals, that do land deals, that do manufacturing deals, that will extend financing for purchase orders to investors. It's just all over the board. Yeah, so we have a wide range, and it's more of the everyman business, new products, consumer products, inventions, ranging the whole way, like I said, to real estate deals. So very wide range that our investors like to invest in. Biggest niche is probably manufacturing on the site.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah, so people that are either creating, and also people with new products. So people that are creating new products, that's a big niche for us. So between those two.
And do you feel like that overall is the biggest, when you think about entrepreneurs and like what people actually want to start businesses in, is that where a lot of entrepreneurs are, is kind of inventors, rather than, the next website or?
Sure, I think that new products are certainly a big majority of the businesses that are getting started, but it's so diverse in terms of what actually comes to us, and of the 6 million companies per year that actually get started. So you do have a lot of service-based businesses that are solving local problems. That's a big chunk of the pie. You have people that have new products that they're looking to get off the ground, and then you have people that are looking to grow and expand their businesses and raise money around that. Sure. So really what angel investors want to see, they want to see a company that has traction, and they want it to be explained to them very briefly. So it needs to capture their attention quickly, it needs to be compelling, and it needs to demonstrate traction and social proof. So one of the key elements is being able to explain what your business does in about 5 words. So it comes back to the traditional angel, the elevator pitch to angel investors, to really just be able to be brief and be able to give a short synopsis of what your business does.
How do you get down your business to 5 words?
It just takes some practice. It comes.
One way I've seen people do it a lot is to say, we are product X meets product Y. Is that what you think about, or?
Sure. So that's a good way to do it. We see a lot of people that will do things like that. We are the Netflix of pet food, for example. You get people that describe their business like that. So, of course, giving a good analogy or some type of parallel is always helpful in terms of letting people understand the business. Sure. So, angel investors want to see that you're solving a big problem. So that's really number one. So you want to talk about the TAM. What's the total addressable market? They want to see that you have traction, you have momentum. No one invests in an idea that's simply drawn on the back of a napkin and it's still sitting there and has no movement or energy around it. People want to be involved with things that have demand and traction. They want to see customer demand. They want to see that you have attracted a solid team. They want to see that you've attracted solid advisors. And then you want to see social proof, which is all part of that. So those are the key components. most angel investors want to get involved for more than just the investment. A lot of them are retired executives that want to, see help a younger entrepreneur out and grow. But I like to say that they aren't the Red Cross. They're not wearing Red Cross badges on their arms to just do charity donations to entrepreneurs. It does need to benefit them, but a lot of times angel investors can get involved, and it's very rewarding to them because they can help move the meter a lot of times with connections they have in the industry and their capital. So being able to bring more than just capital to the table, and those are the best investors, the ones that can bring more than just capital to the table. It typically is people that are in later stages of their careers. So they are either growing or just sustaining a successful business that they've launched, and this is kind of an entertaining thing for them to do, or they're retired. That's the majority of angel investors that we see through our network.
And this is I know that you and AngelList serve different markets. Were you surprised to see, AngelList get so much traction, and find interesting things about that model? Is it that much different than yours?
We weren't that surprised. Those are great entrepreneurs, and it serves its own niche. So there were, in terms of how it was structured, certainly, it's a different model, but we think that the models are different for different niches, and they seem to work well. Sure. So Go Big continue to grow, and Idea Buyer I launched because I saw another big problem, which was I saw that less than 5% of intellectual property was ever commercialized, and tens of billions of dollars is spent per year on research and development, and also patented products. And then there's a big disconnect between people that create intellectual property and people that can bring it to market. So I launched Idea Buyer to solve that problem, and it has done very well in terms of connecting corporations with intellectual property that they wouldn't have otherwise come across. Also, entrepreneurs that are looking to launch new businesses and can find intellectual property that they can build a market around. So it's been very successful in terms of helping commercialize more intellectual property. And that was the whole goal of launching the site. In terms of how we performed, I would say that probably a B plus, A minus. So, from my standards, it's done very well. We have a team that continues to operate it and grow it, and it's actually growing very rapidly. We've done a lot of building and creating systems so that we could achieve more with a more virtual team, and by outsourcing certain services to patent attorneys and other agencies that can help our inventors get results. Yeah, so we've listed over 10,000 patents on Idea Buyer. We've had about 70 licensing agreements that we've actually done hands-on with entrepreneurs and inventors, which has been big. We've had an all-star list of buyers and licensees ranging from HP to 3M to Johnson & Johnson. And we have raised over $2 million for different inventions at a smaller level, hands-on again. And then we have generated about $10 million in purchase orders for people with new products. So it's been pretty successful, given that we launched it in 2007, and then the marketplace itself has listed over $1 billion in intellectual property and resulted in thousands of intellectual property sales and licensing agreements. So the reason I wanted to launch Fundable was because it solves a lot of the problems that we ran into with Idea Buyer on the creation side. So for the entrepreneurs and inventors, it's very hard currently to access idea stage capital. So while we could work with people and get a lot of results for inventors that had already patented their product and had traction and had customer demand, and we then provided the bridge to be able to get those initial purchase orders, be able to get financing to actually make that a reality, or to liquidate their intellectual property and profit from it of what they had already put into it at a big multiple. So we were able to do that. But when someone had an idea or they didn't have customer demand yet, it was always very difficult to get it into stores. So to actually get a product carried on the shelves of something like a Dick's Sporting Goods or in Sears or these major retailers at Walmart, because they always wanted to see a certain number of units in inventory. They wanted to see where you're already carried. They wanted to see that you already had the packaging developed. They wanted to see actual produced units. Well, that's difficult for most people to do unless, like some of our clients, like I was talking about, you've had the funds to be able to push it to that point, which takes hundreds of thousands of dollars. May take $100,000, $150,000. So unless you have that, it can be very difficult to get to the next stages. So what we are doing with Fundable is we are giving people a way to raise that idea stage capital, and that is so enabling and empowering to entrepreneurs. It will generate millions of new businesses and help people raise a tremendous amount of money and really reduce the friction in launching a business and growing it, because you can pretty quickly demonstrate demand and traction for an idea. And when you can publicly show demand, you can raise capital. That no longer becomes a big obstacle, because when you can show thousands of people want something, the risk for an investor goes down dramatically. You're no longer taking a big flyer because you know the demand is there. Absolutely, and we think that it will lead to a lot more investors get involved because it does show, it leads to reduced risk. So instead of taking flyers on a ton of ideas that you don't even know if there's demand for, you can actually pick the ones that get some traction and utilize that money more efficiently.
Yeah. I can also see how it's very synergistic with Go Big Network and Idea Buyer. So you're going to have a great pools of people who've had traction that are really good candidates for Idea Buyer and Go Big Network. Is that kind of how you saw the synergy as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we see tons of great products and truly fantastic entrepreneurs, fantastic inventors. And really, they just need to be able to get the word out about their product, and they need to be able to tell people about it, because right now we're so restricted in terms of what we can do to talk to the public about the fact that we're raising money, or to go out and to reach out for help. There's a lot of friction to taking all these steps, and this really gives you a home to do that. And with this new legislation, it will actually allow more people, a very broad class of capital, to invest in new products and concepts, businesses that weren't able to do so before. So, when you try to do too many things under one roof, it becomes confusing from a brand perspective and from an internal goal perspective. So, I launched Idea Bar with a partner of mine, co-founder Will Schroeder, who's actually my mentor, and we launched it together because we wanted to launch a new organization that we could grow from scratch and really create it based upon new fundamentals and new goals.
Was that a hard decision to change the branding in that way and start something completely new when you're already doing something that has so much potential, or not really?
It wasn't because it was right. The right team. We have an amazing team here in Columbus, and I love working with the partners that I'm working with. So it just flowed naturally. It wasn't a big obstacle in my mind. However, it was a conscious one to be able to focus for the future on Fundable and take myself away from day-to-day operations on Idea Buyer side. I actually didn't raise that much. I bootstrapped it. I took one convertible note, and then I had someone who kept begging me to invest. So I worked with them and took them on as an investor and grew the business. And it was profitable very quickly. Actually, it was profitable within the first 4 months, I believe. So we had a lot of traction, and we were able to grow that pretty rapidly by just pushing the money back into the business, and being very lean with our capital.
And then the next venture here is Fundable. Did you raise money for Fundable?
No, we're all self-funded with Fundable, and we have the benefit now of having a good unlimited runway, really, in terms of growing the business and being able to apply resources to it without taking any outside capital on. So for the foreseeable future, we don't anticipate doing it unless it would be a strategic raise to bring on very valuable partners. Right now, we have a great advisory board ranging from Mark Goines, one of the original investors in Mint, to Dave McClure, who's a serial angel investor, to the founder of Startup Weekend, Mark Nager. So we have a great team, and we're very excited about the path and progress. So with Fundable, we just started. We didn't need to raise any funds, so we just started with the products. So we started with 5 products that we thought had a lot of potential, and we started talking about those in terms of how they would raise and how we could market them and how the process would work. And really, it's going to be a learning experience for us, but we're moving slowly to make sure we do things properly and right. And the progress has been good. We had one company that went on there and raised their funding in 72 hours. And we've had 3 companies that are doing rewards-based raises, which it's limited to currently until the SEC finalizes its rules. There's a deadline of July 4th, but we aren't quite sure whether they're going to hit their deadline. But we've actually had 3 companies on there that have also had equity offers as well, although it wasn't solicited. So, there have been great results for the companies on there thus far, and we're learning a lot from how the crowdfunding process works for businesses. We've seen parallels where it's worked for creative projects, and it's really been patrons for the arts, and at some level, a customer demand for a product. But when you get into the business side, and as we start to prepare for the equity side of public equity investments and start thinking about what that will look like, it's always a learning experience, and us kind of thinking about, and we will test our hypothesis and see how it works, and then adjust accordingly. It's very different. Having investors and growing a business and communicating with those investors long term is much different than someone getting a copy of your CD or poetry book. You are going to be taking on capital from people that expect a return, and are certainly hoping for a return. And the way you communicate with them, the way you grow your business and launch your business is much different. It's also, not every business. There's actually a very small amount of businesses that can be raised strictly from an from a rewards. Sure. So we are specifically for companies, for businesses that are raising capital. We're not for nonprofits or creative projects. We're simply for businesses, serious startups, and that's different than what's out there now. And we are focused on building our platform around the new legislation and the laws that have been changed with the Jobs Act, which is going to open up a tremendous amount of opportunities for entrepreneurs to raise capital from the general public, which up until this point has been illegal. We certainly think that idea stage capital is really the sweet spot for crowdfunding at this point. However, time may prove to us that we're wrong on that. There are certainly businesses that would benefit greatly from raising capital from customers, having a loyal base of customers owning parts of their business and raising capital. However, we look at the biggest problem being friction between starting a business and raising capital and growing that business. So we think that's the biggest opportunity.
And so that's basically idea stage entrepreneurs, like very beginning entrepreneurs, versus if you started 5 businesses and you've exited out of them, you're probably not going to use it because you don't have that problem as much of how to raise money. Is that accurate or no?
It may just prove that those investments are more expensive in terms of the valuations. So experienced investors may choose, experienced entrepreneurs may choose to launch their companies via crowdfund, as we've seen entertainers do and writers do on Kickstarter. We may see that they utilize crowdfunding as a way to engage their customer base and get them more involved in the process. I mean, think about how involved your customer base would be if they owned a part of your company.
That's amazing.
We see very little of that now, just because people, are restricted to investments in companies like ExxonMobil, and you see it, I guess, Coca-Cola and Apple. You can invest in those, but most investments are we don't even know what those companies do unless we really dig into them. So to be able to invest in more companies that you are actually whose products and services you're using, I think will be very powerful. Well, yeah, we think that B2C is going to be the biggest play here. So it's businesses to consumers. However, you may see very boring businesses that are very profitable that could get into crowdfunding. However, it really just doesn't have the pull because the general public, unless there's big payouts in terms of dividends and it's a very profitable, good investment, it just wouldn't make as much sense for crowdfunding. So this is a very important thing to discuss, and it's also going to be something that has to be worked through in terms of how investment shares are classified. To look at it from the entrepreneur's perspective, which we're trying to take in a good objective view on this. You can't have 1,000 people who have put $50 into your company, all wanting to have a say in terms of how your business is run. And however, those investors certainly can be engaged to provide information. But I see more of that feedback being through polls and surveys, and seeing it as a way for entrepreneurs to use it as an asset, as opposed to it being a liability.
Right.
But in regards to investor rights, I guess is what this would boil down to. There will be a lot of regulations around how entrepreneurs or issuers have to communicate with their investors, and there will be proper things put in place. And the better investments, the better entrepreneurs will communicate with their investors and engage them, I think, in the process as they move forward. And one thing that's fantastic about that as well is an entrepreneur or business isn't limited to one crowd fund. So you can launch your initial product into a initial base of customers that help launch your company. You may choose to reward them in the future by making it another investment opportunity available moving forward to expand the business or to launch a new product, and help be a part of that because they were integral in helping you launch your company. Absolutely. I think communication will be key, and certainly providing tools where entrepreneurs can do that easily will be something that we'll focus on moving forward, because it will enable the entrepreneurs, and we always feel that communication among entrepreneurs and their investors is one of the key ingredients in keeping that relationship positive. The investor-entrepreneur relationship is going to be a tricky one because at scale, you have a lot of people that could be difficult personalities, and $250 could be all the money in the world to them, and it could cause issues for certain entrepreneurs in the future. So it's certainly going to continue to be a topic of discussion. However, it's nothing that hasn't been dealt with at scale with public companies and things of that nature.
Right.
So, again, these are high quality problems to have, and I think they're more than addressable. We're not quite sure in terms of what the SEC will mandate in terms of if you can limit people from investing. I think that it would be detrimental if you could not, simply because if you were to issue stock shares to the public and you found out your competitor was buying a bulk of that,
That's what I was just thinking.
yeah, that could be, you don't want that as an entrepreneur, so you should have the right to prohibit that from happening. However, I don't want to speculate on what the SEC is going to do because there's a lot of gray area right now, and I'm sure they'll develop a framework that is positive for both the entrepreneurs and the investors.
And when is the SEC expected to have the final legislation
So there,
and it be enacted?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are two main deadlines. So the first is July 4th, which mandates that the SEC modify 506D, which is a regulation around public solicitation. So currently, entrepreneurs cannot publicly solicit investment. They have to go through very complicated processes and they can only speak to accredited investors. What this will allow entrepreneurs to do is actually advertise that they are raising capital, and they can advertise to everyone to state the fact that they're raising capital. However, they will still only be able to raise capital from accredited investors.
Interesting.
But it's a huge opportunity because most people don't know accredited investors. So what this will do is it gives you the opportunity to talk to the world about your opportunity, and for interested accredited investors that would have never known about that opportunity otherwise to come and invest in your business. Now the second deadline is January 1st of 2013. And what that will allow the public to do is invest in startups. So every individual will be able to invest in any company that they choose. So entrepreneurs will be able to publicly solicit and also accept investments from the general public. And they'll have to go through some steps to do a background check and make sure that there's full disclosure to protect the public. But the public will be able to invest in companies of their choosing as opposed to being restricted to public companies. So it's a fantastic thing for both entrepreneurs and investors at that point, and it will open up trillions of dollars of investment capital for new companies and new startups. Yeah, we're very excited about it. We think that being able to publicly talk about this is important because we have, when these laws were first put into place, and while they're draconian now, they did serve a purpose because they were used to protect the public from being scammed out of money. People selling swampland and snake oil in the 30s. It was right after the Great Depression, the stock market crash. And they were put into place to protect investors. Nowadays, we have information and access to so much more information, and we can communicate very quickly with each other, with other potential investors, with the issuers, and there's much more transparency than there was 80 years ago.
Yeah. Do you think new media will source it as well? I guess all the tech blogs are just thinking what the implications are. What are some more implications of? So that's what will happen. Theoretically, we're going to have this whole market. What is going to be changed? Do you think tactically will new company just over this July regulation part opening?
Sure. So there will be a much more public discussion about companies that high-profile companies that are raising money. I'm sure there will be a lot of excitement around the first companies to actually move forward and take advantage of this legislation. It's going to be a very, very exciting time. It's going to require a lot of effort and discussion around what the proper ways are to do things. The SEC is conducting discussions now about how to best proceed. So a lot of things are going on. There will be a lot of learning to do from the investor standpoint, the entrepreneur standpoint, with the SEC. So we're very excited. So right now, one of the biggest issues, like you're speaking about, is that if you do have interested investors and you're working through counsel to conduct that investment, it is very expensive. The cost of capital there is very high, and that's because there's so much. It's not transparent. It's not a transparent process. There's so much mystery around the process because it can't be publicly discussed. But if you can, as a platform, make general legal disclaimers and contracts, term sheets, all standard, you can really reduce that friction, reduce legal costs, because you can create a standard process for how companies raise money. And you've seen it done successfully through incubators like Y Combinator, where they use standard convertible note contracts, and it's worked very well to help reduce legal bills and help companies get out of the gate with much lower cost of capital. So, one of the biggest mistakes would be that people oftentimes think that a platform is a pot of gold, and if they just put their idea up there, that everything will come to them and they'll automatically get funded. That's not the case. It requires a lot of preparation, as much for the collateral as it does for actually marketing the project. So I would say that not preparing enough for the marketing side of it would be one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs are currently making with the reward side. Currently, with only accredited investors being able to even contact companies on Fundable and through Go Big, this is very, very similar structure, is because they're accredited, they have a certain level of sophistication. We do run startups through a series of litmus tests, for lack of a better term, to see whether or not their use of proceeds are actually reasonable. So we do some general things to kind of weed out things that really aren't realistic, and we think that might potentially take advantage of investors or people that are backing projects. So if we see a project that's pre-ordering something and we don't think they can fulfill the delivery with the amount they're raising, we'll get on the phone with the founders. We'll do some background review to kind of see what their history is as an entrepreneur and see what the credibility level is, and do some general overview with them. Yeah, so this was something that I used quite a bit early on in my when launching a business, and while we don't use it anymore, it was a valuable asset for us. And it's very similar to Elance. Elance is another great one, and what it allows you to do is hire people for short-term work. So there's a lot of skilled labor out there that is looking for side projects, and this allows you to connect with them and get quotes from them for projects you have. So whether or not you want to launch a website or have a product designed, you can go and tap this talent at and have them do work for you. So it's a great tool as an entrepreneur because it gives you a cheap way to get great results, and the workers benefit as well because they can utilize their extra time to make more money. So Boomerang is a fantastic tool if you're a Gmail user, in that you can schedule your emails to be sent out a week from now, a month from now, 2 days from now, tomorrow morning, a few hours from now. So it's great if you are preparing for the next day. For example, you want emails to go out in the morning. It's fantastic if you have some time on your hands and you want to schedule some emails to go out to wish people a happy birthday.
Oh, wow. Okay, there's one use I could see using it for.
Yeah, if you want to send people a follow-up email, so if someone says, well, follow up with me next month, we can discuss that further. You can schedule it to go out to them next month, and
great.
It makes it much easier.
So you actually use this on a daily basis?
I do use it a little bit, not as much as I probably should, but I do use it on, I would say, a weekly basis.
Okay.
Good uses
Do you
for
use it for so a lot of times when you email someone and they don't respond, so you have to follow up with them. Do you use it for that? I haven't used it for that because I feel like I'm afraid of it being too impersonal, or maybe I schedule something, the person responds, but I forget to unschedule the automated follow-up or stuff like that.
Yeah, so what's nice about Boomerang is that we use it for a lot of our team on the idea buyer side, and we also have a lot of our team at Go Big that uses it. And what's nice about it is that you can actually have it remind you and just send a reminder, put it back at the top of your inbox if someone doesn't respond to your email. So you can keep it right at the top of your inbox.
So it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily always use it to send out an email, let's say 5 days. You might just send a reminder to you at the top of your inbox.
Correct. Yeah, it's just a nice, useful tool. WePay is a startup out of California that we became familiar with when launching Fundable, and they have a great team behind them. They're trying to kind of disrupt what PayPal has done and what they're doing. They're trying to create a new, more user-friendly payment system. It's easy to implement. The team is very easy to work with. You can actually talk to real human beings, which is fantastic in terms of support. So, they have all the functionality that PayPal has, but you can actually speak to their support team, which is nice. I think that we'll actually have more angel investors that get active and become involved in startups as this becomes a more public conversation, and it becomes as entrepreneurs are able to publicly discuss the opportunities that they have available, we'll have more people that do qualify as accredited investors come out of the woodwork and begin making investments. So I see a lot more capital being invested, and I see that capital being used more efficiently than it's currently being used, because investors will have a very public way of reducing their risk when they see traction, a very public way of kind of gauging whether or not a company will be successful or not.